I feel kind of all alone, can't see anybody else. But it's up to you really to decide. I just wanted to make a very small correction. The poster said that I am the chair of Krishet. No, I am a research associate with the chair at Krishet at Nelson Mandela University. Thank you very much for inviting me. I am really honored to be in this space to engage. I'm finding out for the first time that I'm the only person speaking, so I'll try to be concise, but also reflect on a number of things, and I hope that will give us more time for engagement. I generally find the question and answer section of any of these talks far more engaging than me talking or just listening to other people talk. I didn't prepare any PowerPoints. I think we depend way too much on PowerPoints and in higher education, and I'll just try to really reflect on these questions and try to bring in examples from my own experience and my own current research that can maybe give us some things to talk about in the Q&A session. I'm just taking a look at my clock just to see and get myself to make sure that I don't go over time. Yes, so just a few things. So I've been in South African higher education since about 2005. I was an undergraduate student. I was a study abroad student. At a time in 2005, I was in South Africa as a student at that time studying in the United States. Then came to South Africa, did my master's and my PhD, and then have been working in South African higher education since then. I had my own my own experience as a postgraduate international student has been very interesting, and there's some current research I'll mention in a moment where I'm reflecting on that experience as a student. Being Eastern European with experience of studying in the United States, and then coming to South Africa to study conflict studies, conflict and peace building. I had an expectation coming to South Africa that I would have a slightly more diverse and more pluralistic and African informed postgraduate education in conflict and peace studies than what I would have, for example, if I stayed in the United States at the time. And perhaps that was a bit naive from my side, but I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that much about South Africa and South African higher education at the time. So when I came to South Africa now long time ago, it was a very different experience from what I was expecting and hoping for. I ended up in a postgraduate master's program in conflict studies at one of South Africa's universities that was, it was completely Euro-American centric. The entire curriculum over 2 years of coursework masters was from European and American perspectives. When any South African perspectives came through the curriculum, they were almost entirely by white South Africans. There were hardly any perspectives from the African continent or elsewhere in the global South. And all the academics delivering the program were white South Africans. And even when they brought in, international scholars to, be the lecturers in the program, they were, again, white Europeans or white Americans. And that was a very, in many ways, very shocking experience for me. But at that time, so this is now before Fees Must Fall and Roads Must Fall, I didn't have a theoretical lens through which I could assess my own experience. And I had all these thoughts in my mind, in my head, but not necessarily having the frames through which I can interrogate this, or perhaps see whether this is a bigger problem than this one specific academic program. Fast forward to 2015, 2016, when Rhodes Must Fall and Fees Must Fall start. At the time, I was at Nelson Mandela University, and I ended up going to as many engagements, student engagements, or any engagements on coloniality, decolonization at the time, and that was an eye-opening experience for me, because it really told me that those critical questions I had about my own postgraduate studies in South Africa and the predominant Eurocentricity and whiteness of higher education in South Africa at the time wasn't just something that I was thinking about all alone. Well, it was something I was thinking about at the time all alone, but it was a much bigger problem, systemic and structural problem, and also that it was a global problem as well. And it was honestly the student activism and the student movement calling for decolonization and many other things at the time that opened my eyes to the problematic ways that higher education is framed and organized in South Africa, and the way that the curriculum is thought about in South Africa. And I'm talking about my own experience as a student at the time, and people have their own different experiences in different fields. And since 2015, 2016, I've been writing extensively about coloniality, decolonization. What are we talking about? How do we define these things? I've been looking at it from different perspectives. I've been looking at the curriculum, about institutional structures, and what does it mean, and what would it entail to decolonize, and where are we when it comes to decolonization? To what extent do national higher education policies contribute to us, dismantling Eurocentricity or not contributing? So I've done a lot of research on all this, and kind of like the short answer to the question number one: in what ways does the current curriculum reflect or fail to reflect the diverse histories, cultures, and knowledge systems of South African communities? It doesn't. So we now are talking about these issues, and it's really important and timely to talk about this 10 years after Rhodes Must Fall and Fees Must Fall. And we haven't really gotten anywhere. When you look at the big picture, there are some spaces, there are some institutions, there are some programs where achievements have been made. There's a lot of really important scholarship that's been developed over the past decade in South Africa. And in many ways, the push to decolonize universities and the curriculum that came from South Africa in 2015 and 2016 has gone global in many ways, has inspired movements and people and other scholars to see same or similar problems in their own settings, including places like the UK, the colonial capital itself. And so a lot has happened, a lot has been achieved, but at the same time, we have to be really critical about the failures. And the failures are not the failures of the students. We have to remember that. The students gave us the push to think critically about so many things that were wrong in South African higher education. They opened up kind of the frames for many of us to see the problems, to see where we need to go, what we need to interrogate, what critical questions we need to ask about the curriculum. But in many ways, the South African higher education system, being colonial, apartheid, and neoliberal system, with a government that is very happy to maintain this neoliberal higher education system, to try and replicate whatever is being done in Europe and North America, rather than thinking critically what needs to be dismantled and rebuilt in different ways, with institutions that really don't want to see anything resembling real, radical, fundamental change that is required in South African higher education. We have gotten to a point where decolonization is not more than a buzzword, and in many places and in many spaces, it's been dropped altogether. We're talking about curriculum that to a large extent resembles, what it was, in 2015 and before that. And again, I'm going to use the example of my own program, master's program that I did in 2007, 2009, which was, I would say, 95% white and Euro-American centric in 2007, 2009. I'm currently working on a paper where we reflect on that specific program, not that specific program, but the field of conflict and peace studies in South Africa. And I use autoethnography to reflect about my own experience in that specific program. And I also reflect on that same curriculum, which I assessed in 2019. So 4 or 5 years after Fees Must Fall and Roads Must Fall, in the middle of the so-called decolonial turn, there was no change whatsoever to that curriculum. So whatever was promised when the students were protesting in 2015 and 2016 did not reflect in the actual curriculum itself. And to me, that is a prime example of this failure to do what needs to be done. Students gave us direction, pointed out to the problems, but in many ways the institutions have failed to do what needs to be done. And I really struggle with that because I don't know what our university leaders think will happen going forward when these important things that need to be done, these systemic and structural things that need to change, are not being done. And we have seen in many ways, and there's some really good scholarship coming out over the years. There are colleagues who have written in 2021 about, they use the term decolonial washing, where they looked at 4 different South African universities that have proclaimed that they've decolonized the curriculum. When you interrogate critically what they've done, these colleagues call it decolonial washing, where you just basically use this term because it's popular, but you don't really do much or anything to really fundamentally change the curriculum, to where you add 2 or 3 black authors to an already white dominated curriculum, and you say you're done. What have you done? You haven't done really anything. You have just sugar-coated the problems, and you just want to get the students to shut up from to not complain about things, because you're going to tell them that you have done something. One of my colleagues and friends, who was one of the leaders of the Fees Must Fall student movement at Nelson Mandela University back then, 10 years ago, she used to say how in 2017 she started seeing Biko and Fanon being added to the curriculum that they don't necessarily belong, because that's not the field of study that she was doing at the time. But the academics were adding Biko and Fanon just so they can actually say, oh, they've added some, they have decolonized, where you put in things that are not necessarily relevant, but you just want to, you just want to pretend that you've done something. So I think in many ways and in many spaces, that's where the South African higher education is when it comes to the curriculum. And I've done research over the years, and recently, we've looked at the curriculum, and to a large extent, curriculum in South African higher education remains very white and very Euro-American centric, and not really much has done to fundamentally change how we approach knowledge and all that. I see I've already spent half of my time, so I'm going to try and manage it properly from here. Question number 2, I just want to go back to question number 1. It is a very important question to focus on, does the curriculum reflect on and incorporate the diverse histories, cultures, and knowledge systems of South African communities? The long and short answer is no, it doesn't. But I just want to say something also that, when we talk about epistemic decolonization, and when we talk about plurality of knowledge or knowledges, we shouldn't also only restrict ourselves in higher education in South Africa or anywhere else to our own space. So in South Africa, we cannot say that decolonization is only, about bringing in other South African perspectives. We also have to look at beyond South Africa. There's the continent, the African continent. There's the more broadly global South, which has been erased from the mainstream Euro-American centric scholarship and the broader knowledge project, pushed onto us globally as this universal knowledge project, And so when we talk about epistemic decolonization, decolonization of the university and knowledge, we need to think about the plurality of knowledges around the world and not just about the excluded South African communities, because there's so much more out there that we need to engage with. If we only talk about South African communities and South African excluded knowledges, and we ignore the African continent, and the rest of the world that is also being excluded, we again are talking about decolonization that is again excluding. So we should be very just careful not to do that when we talk about decolonization. Question number 2 was, what unspoken messages about power, identity, and belonging are embedded in how education is structured and delivered? How do these messages shape students' confidence and sense of self? There was a very important paper published in 2023. It was by colleagues at Rhodes University, where they had this participatory research with their students. So it was academics and students doing this research together, and they did part of it during the pandemic. But what came out of this research was how there were some really important voices, student voices coming through this research saying that, we literally don't see ourselves, people like us from our communities, in anything that we learn at the university. And I think that in many ways, responds to that second question. The question of power, identity, and belonging is very important, because if we assume, or we are told, or we propagate through university education this Euro-American centric ways of knowing, and the worldviews, and the knowledge that is being given to the students. So if everything that we think, the way that we think about the world, if everything comes from this small part of the world, the colonial capitals and these dominant global powers, which represent the so-called modern colonial world built on white supremacy, we're telling the rest of the world that there's nothing that they have offered to the kind of humanity, to the global knowledge project, and that they can only follow whatever is being done and thought about in the global north, in Europe and North America and some other parts of the world. And that is basically the maintenance of the white supremacist project, of the global colonial project, of Eurocentricity. It's part of erasure and subjugation of so many knowledges and ways of knowing, perspectives from around the world, historically and up until today. And for example, if we continue to push the white and Eurocentric knowledge and ways of knowing onto Black students in South Africa, I mean, we're basically telling them that that they just have to learn to mimic what is being done by white people in South Africa, or by Europeans and people from the United States. I mean, it's a deeply dehumanizing thing to do, and it's deeply shocking, and there is no way that it can in any way be justified. And I really think and hope that we need to challenge this in any way and shape and form that is possible. The question number 3, I'll try to finish in a few minutes so that we can have a good discussion. What would a truly decolonized curriculum look like in practice? What practical steps can educators, institutions, and communities take to move from critique to meaningful change? A few years ago, there was a very important book published by Wits University Press called Decolonising the Human. That if you Google it, you will find that book. It's available open access. You can download it freely. It's a very important book, and the editors of that book, Pofu and Stein, they had a very important, I mean, the whole book is very good, but the introductory chapter was really good, kind of framing a lot of things in many ways. And so there's a part of that chapter that they wrote that I really find very useful when we talk about what is decolonization and what would a decolonized curriculum look like in practice. They speak about the curriculum or decolonization being about delinking from the Euro-American hegemonic knowledge project. So delinking from that globally hegemonic project to rebuild, to rebuild other knowledges, other perspectives, to reestablish them, to build them up, to have them in engagement, conversation with other subjugated knowledges around the world in a similar way, and then at some point relinking with that Euro-American knowledge project, but seeing it not as the mainstream, but as something that just exists in the world, just another set of kind of global perspectives that exist in the world. I really see this as the way that we need to think about. We have to theorize it, and kind of like look at it in practice. And I just wanted to very briefly tell you that. So I'm currently working on a project where we think about, what would decolonizing conflict and peace studies in South Africa look like and entail. And for that research project, myself and my colleague, my co-author, we deliberately decided that we are not going to engage with the mainstream Euro-American scholarship on this subject or this field. We are only engaging with the scholarship, critical and decolonial scholarship from Africa and the rest of the global South. So what we are saying through this, and we are very deliberate and open in that paper, that we are doing this deliberately because we want to de-link our thinking about decolonizing conflict and peace studies in South Africa. We want to de-link it from the mainstream Euro-American centric scholarship on this, to think in a different way about this field, and engage with other parts of the world. There are very important, indigenous perspectives from around the world, and other perspectives from Africa, from elsewhere in the global South. We're engaging with those perspectives, those either critical and decolonial perspectives, formerly, currently subjugated knowledges about this field, to think how it can be different. And then at some later stage, not in this paper, but at some later stage, we can relink with the dominant scholarship from the global north, but we're not going to see them as the scholarship and the people who set the agenda, but we're just going to see them as, another set of, points that we can learn from, but they are not going to dominate our thinking about this field and what this field can look like if it is decolonized. I don't know if that makes sense. We're finishing this paper, and we just had actually earlier today conversation about this, how we are very explicit that this is what we do, and we see that as almost like a methodological decolonial praxis, where we are very deliberate that there are people who have shaped this field, and they are literally, like, people say that you cannot write a paper about this field if you don't read all those white men that have shaped the field. We took a stand in this paper to say we are not reading them, because if we are decolonizing, we cannot read that to decolonize. We have to read other people, other voices, other perspectives who have been grappling with similar issues and similar problems. And then later on, maybe we're going to read them in some other way for some other project. But for this project, if we are talking about decolonization, and I know some people are going to say that, this is erasing, this is now kind of like us versus them and all that. But, we have to put in practice this delinking to relink at some later stage, and all that. So we are practicing this. We're trying to figure out how to do it. And I'm not saying that they are. I mean, okay, even in this engagement, in this paper, we also engaging with some voices from the global north that are trying to decolonize their own curriculum. So we're not saying that don't read white people. I mean, I am white myself, but we're not saying don't read white people, but don't read the dominant Eurocentric scholarship. If you're trying to decolonize the curriculum, you can read them, in different spaces at different times, and engage with them. But we need to find ways, practical ways to do this. And we found this practical way where we found an enormous amount of critical decolonial scholarship from different parts of the African continent, different indigenous communities in places like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, settler colonies where people, indigenous communities, are also trying to figure out how to exist in this very oppressive space. And so we're learning from all these different perspectives to try to make sense of, what would this mean and entail, and what would then the curriculum look like in that sense, and how would it be different from that, Eurocentric mainstream that still continues to dominate. I think I'll stop here. I can talk for hours, but I don't want to do that. I really hope that we can hear other people's comments and perspectives, and there may be some questions as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heleta. It's actually amazing how you actually decided to stop 3 seconds before my timer went off.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that very insightful discussion. And as you spoke and unpacked these 3 questions, I actually picked up something, and I was reminded of the words that was said by Lord Macleay in his report to Parliament in Britain in 1835, where he actually spoke about the ways that Africa can be conquered and how we continue to see the legacies of that even years after Africa has been gotten off from the hands of the colonizer, where he actually stated that as a way of actually ensuring that Africa is conquered, get rid of her education system and get rid of her culture and make her believe that whatever is white is actually better than what is black. And we can still see the legacies of that even years after the independence that has been gotten by these African countries and also the countries in the global south. And you spoke about important aspects of decolonizing the curriculum, talking about the invisible shackles that are there, and going beyond just going to a piece of paper and saying that, okay, now the curriculum will take this direction, but also freeing the mind and ensuring that the mind is freed so that people can actually move forward into decolonizing everything. It starts with the mind. It starts with getting rid of the invisible shackles and chains that we still find ourselves shackled to. And we spoke about dismantling. And when you dismantle, you don't say, okay, I need to be considerate of this and considerate of that, but you say, this is not how things are supposed to be. Let me dismantle everything and then start building from scratch. Because reality of the matter is that when you rely on a Eurocentric view to actually bring about decolonization, you will not achieve it because they are pushing a narrative that favors their side of the story. And you can't rely on a side of the story that is from a person that benefited from the system. So by those few words, Doc, I just want to say thank you so much. And now we've come to the part where the the audience can actually start asking questions and engaging with Dr. Heleta. And yeah, so we're gonna have maybe 5 questions for the first round, and then we'll give him a chance to actually address those questions and those comments. And then if we still have time, we can actually engage more people. So colleagues, this is the time for you to ask questions and have comments from Dr. Heleta's presentation. By a show of hands, colleagues. Okay, for now we just have 1 hand. Okay, more hands are coming. Okay, I think for this round we're just going to take 3 questions. The first one will be from Loting Komo, second one will be from Basam Venene, and the third one will be from Nomleje Olisi. In that order, colleagues, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the presenter for an exciting presentation. I enjoyed listening to your talk. But I have 2 questions that I need to pose. I'm not an expert on decoloniality. I'm also not an expert on curriculum development. So maybe I'll be asking from a point of ignorance. So when we are talking of decolonizing the curriculum, for example, is it not a folly or a vain exercise, considering that the outside world, the world outside the university is very colonial? Are we not fighting a giant, a hegemon, a big thing that it would take centuries to undo or to decolonize? I'm trying to think of us as economic determinants when we are speaking to our students, when we are teaching our students. If you talk to them, all they are looking forward to is to economically liberate themselves. They want to go and work at Standard Bank. They want to go and work at these big organizations. So these are the organizations that we are training our students to go to. Once we decolonize the curriculum, they sort of become, I don't know if I'm putting my point across clear, but my point is outside the university, we have a very colonial structure. So to decolonize the curriculum means they are no longer in sync with the capitalist world or the colonial world outside of the university. So this is something that I think we have to engage with. The reality of the world, the practicalities of this decoloniality project. Then the second part, when you talked about readings that you are using, once you start talking about, for example, I'm picking random examples here, democracy. Naturally, you have to start perhaps through the Treaty of Westphalia. You have to start with the French Revolution. So the moment you want to discuss or engage democracy, you are forced to go to the colonial setting. Once you want to start talking about labor, you are forced to go to Karl Marx to discuss the units of labor. So you are forced to go back to the colonial source in order to initiate your decolonial thinking or thought or discussion with your students. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the presenter. Apologies, I'm asking from a point of ignorance. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Ngomo. Mr. Mvenene?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Samke. Thank you so much, Dr. Heleta, for the insightful talk. I've learned tremendously. I just want to build, so my comment is based on what Dr. Loti said, and mine is more of, so I was listening to an elections debate last year, and there were some young people there, and one leader from one of our liberal parties was saying that if we decide to decolonize, therefore we are making our education less competitive. And so there was this now discussion around decolonization versus competitiveness, because like Dr. Ngomo said, our graduates will go into a world of work that is not decolonized, that is not Afrocentric, and so on. And then I want to share just my thoughts on critical pedagogy in terms of our pedagogical approaches. And like you said, we do include Fanon, Biko, we do include Ngugi wa Odiongo in our curriculum. We try to center them. But then outside of just teaching their content or what they wrote, you then end up finding yourself saying, guys, remember, I'm not encouraging anyone to disrupt or to shut down or anything like that. So I think at the very same time as academics, perhaps our class position, which provides some level of privilege, does also become a hindering factor. That's just a point that I wanted to share there. Otherwise, that's it for me. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Mvenene Nomdleje.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question. Dr. Heleta, I will ask on behalf of myself and other students as well in the space. I would like to know how do you as a student tell your supervisor that actually I would like to approach my work from an Afrocentric perspective, and what is the best way to reject any Eurocentric scholarship that your supervisor may suggest that you explore on your work? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Asanda, can I take you in the second round of questions? Let's just give Dr. Heleta a chance to actually respond to these 3 questions. Then on the second round, you'll be the first one. Thank you. Dr. Heleta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I've been writing down. I'm glad I did, because I would forget half of the things. No, thank you so much for these very important points and comments. World outside of university is colonial, capitalist, neoliberal. What would decolonization, mean and do to the students? Very important question. But if we say that the world outside the university is neoliberal, colonial, capitalist, unjust, unequal, and we shouldn't change the university because then the students are not going to be ready to go to this world to exploit them and to dehumanize them. I don't think we can think like that. I mean, it's a very important and valid question, and I think it's a concern of many, and I do understand fully that higher education is seen by many people as the way to a better job, prosperity, wealth, whatever it is, that people think about, and there's nothing wrong with thinking like that. But just because the world is a terrible place doesn't mean that we should continue with Eurocentric education so that our students can fit in this world that will exploit them, and the corporations that are going to exploit them. I really honestly think that we have a responsibility in higher education to shape the minds of young people in a way that is pluralistic, that allows them to learn about themselves, their society, their communities, their continent, and the world through different perspectives, their own perspectives, the perspectives of their own communities, from the knowledges and perspectives from the continent, from the rest of the world, instead of only from textbooks written by white men, largely white men from Europe and North America. I honestly, if we stop thinking about changing this, I'm not going to be part of the university or higher education. My only reason for remaining in higher education is that, you know, there's this push by many people to change things, to decolonize things, the knowledge in the curriculum. If that becomes an impossible dream, then it's really not a space with any form of hope that is there. So I really think the universities, I mean, the purpose of university is to be this, the space of critical thinking, education, knowledge creation, knowledge development, also dismantling of the existing hegemonies, like the Eurocentric hegemony. And I think if we give that up just so that we are liked by the dominant forces outside of the university, then, you know, we shouldn't then be at the university, honestly. That is my personal opinion. The question about curriculum and you know, how do we study democracy or anything, you know, if we don't start with the European experiences, that is the dominant view, the dominant Eurocentric view. There are societies around the world that have existed and flourished long before Europe became anything. And we don't learn from those societies because the European colonial project has erased their knowledges, perspectives, their contributions, their stories of the contributions to the, you know, development of thinking, of writing, of knowledge, and all kinds of other things, sciences. Most of the sciences and knowledges and perspectives and ways of thinking about the world and different phenomena in the world have been developed outside of Europe. And the colonial project partly was a lot of it was to steal those innovations and the knowledges and the contributions and reframe them to become the European experiences. And so part of the decolonial project is to see what else is there that we can learn from. And so there is a lot that we can learn from. I mean, I remember reading Nelson Mandela's book, Long Walk to Freedom, where he writes about how when he was growing up, he learned a lot about negotiation and, you know, getting everybody in the society involved in decision-making, in governance. He learned about governance as a child from observing his own, you know, own community and how it was operating, how decisions were made, and how the chiefs were listening to the ordinary people, and everybody could get a say in terms of what decisions would be made. He didn't learn that from a textbook written by somebody in London. He learned that from his own setting in the rural Eastern Cape. And we often forget that in many societies, many indigenous societies, there have been systems and structures in place for a very, very long time. And we just ignore all that for the sake of, you know, because the textbook written in London or New York tells us that, you know, it's only this very, you know, European or Eurocentric experience that counts and that is valid. And part of the decolonial project is also to unearth all these other ways of thinking from different parts of the world that have been subjugated, and, you know, we've been told that they don't count, and we need to make them count through higher education. one other question was about, if we decolonize the curriculum and we develop graduates, they're not going to be competitive. In its simple essence, decolonizing the curriculum means engaging with so much more knowledge from different parts of the world than what comes from Europe and North America. How is that going to make us less competitive? If we know more, if we are able to compare and contrast and think critically from broader global perspectives, that is, in my opinion, only going to make us better. It requires more work for us, more work for academics. They need to read more, bring in different perspectives from around the world. It requires more work for the students, and I hope they are also going to be on board because more work, more perspectives from around the world are going to, in my opinion, make them more knowledgeable. And how are people who are more knowledgeable, who can think critically from different global perspectives, local and global perspectives, how are they not competitive in whatever field that they go? I really think that that is not, I mean, it is something that is repeated very often, but I don't think that is the case. And the last question, how do you tell your supervisor you want to approach your topic from an Afrocentric perspective? Really important, it's a real question. And I think we often forget these power dynamics. And when it comes to postgraduate studies, it is those power dynamics one-on-one, the student and the professor, the student and the supervisor. And I think universities are not doing enough to prepare both the academics and the students how to approach these topics and these engagements. We don't ever, I mean, both as a student and as a lecturer, I've never been in spaces where academics were open and willing to tell the students that, if you disagree, please come forward and tell me in what way I'm wrong. Maybe I mean, not just being wrong, but, maybe I haven't read enough, come and bring different perspectives, different, give me, the direction that I haven't taken in teaching because I haven't read A, B, C, D, whatever, things that, I haven't read. We don't do that. There's this still, the lecturer, the professor, the supervisor are the ones who know. The students are supposed to just say, okay, yes, I'll do it. And it's highly problematic. I really think that, I really hope that, in higher education at the universities, when it comes to now the specific question, supervision, make your case. This is my topic. This is what I want to do. This is the framework I want to take. I want to do it, as a decolonial.
It seems like Dr. Savo is actually, oh, he's back.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry, apologies. I think just disconnected for a second. I was just talking about that question about, I don't know when I was cut, but I really think that the students and the postgraduate students in particular need to be empowered by institutions that to be able to justify what they want to do, to reference and cite and explain why they want to do things in certain methodological ways or theoretical ways. And if there's a still problem with supervisors who want to push you in a kind of like the old school direction, what Eurocentric ways of thinking, perhaps finding another supervisor would be my other answer, really, honestly. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heleta. Mr. Boboy, please come with your question, and you will be the last one to ask. Then we'll actually wrap up because we are almost out of time.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues and Dr. Heleta. Firstly, thank you so much, Doc, for your insightful presentation on decolonization. I would like to comment on the comments made by my colleagues, Dr. Mbenene and Dr. Ngomo. I think they asked really sensible questions with regards to are we really preparing our graduates to prepare them for the global world where they can be able to be employed even in the UK. I'm saying this because I'm in the social work profession, and we've had so many applicants that via our department as the social work who would really want to be social workers abroad in England, Australia. So to think of it, when you are there, definitely that's Eurocentric, and the approaches that we use mostly in social work, just to mention a few, is the systems theory, which is dominant in social work, empowerment theory, just to mention a few. So I think it is very important that we be careful in the manner in which we do our things, or in the manner in which we deliver our curriculum as the academics. We are in the academic space, and one of the modules that I teach involves the Eurocentric theories. So we need to ensure that we infuse the African philosophies as well. But it is said that there is nothing much that I know of ngaphandle kobuntu philosophy, and some principles that are applicable in social work, such as Batopili principles. So we need to start working on perhaps developing our own approaches, philosophies that will resonate with us, to complement with the existing Eurocentric approaches. To be honest, they are not as bad to think about it. Some of them, they are applicable and we use them in social work, but we just need to come up with our own, especially with the existing ones, Ubuntu, Batupili principles, and so forth. So this is just a comment rather than a question. And thank you for your response. I think it was your last comment. You did touch base that we need to broaden our scope. We need to, with the existing philosophies and Eurocentric approaches, we need to broaden them with the manner in which they will resonate with us as the African people. So yeah, that was just a comment. And thank you so much, Sani, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you so much, Maasi. Colleagues, it is a very beautiful discussion. And what Dr. Heleta has actually reminded me of is the fact that as the young people in the academic space, it's high time we go to our own students and teach them in a different way from how we were taught. As opposed to just telling them what is in the textbook and giving them what is in the textbook. Give them articles that talk about something that is contrary from what is in the textbook, so that they are able to engage critically with the material in front of them and formulate their own opinions. Because if you're going to have a student that is rather a parrot, then it means that as an academic you have failed. Because if it's a matter of just regurgitating what is there in the mainstream, then there's a problem. In just a minute, Dr. Heleta, can you just give us closing remarks? Then we can actually go our separate ways, because we literally have 1 minute, because we had started at 2:05. We're supposed to end at 3:05. So just in a minute, give us the closing remarks, and thank you so much for today.
Sorry, I was disconnected for a few seconds. Would you like me to give closing remarks?
Yes, please, in a minute, because we are out of time. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not going to add anything new. I want to thank you for inviting me. I also want to thank you for continuing these conversations and asking these important questions. I really think that, I mean, it's been a decade now since Roads Must Fall and Peace Must Fall. It is so important to reflect on what happened, what was achieved, what was not achieved, where things still need to go. And I encourage you and other colleagues to continue, and the students as well, to continue to ask critical questions, and continue to demand that, you know, things change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heleta. Colleagues, on behalf of the Dean from the Faculty of Law, Humanities and Social Sciences and the organizing team for the Enkundleni Roundtable discussion, this is it for the year. We will meet again next year. And thank you so much for participating. Once again, Dr. Heleta, we are very grateful for availing yourselves, and we are really humbled and honored to have you. Thank you so much. Colleagues, enjoy the rest of your evening, of your afternoon. And yeah, see you next year.
Thank you so much for making time, Dr. Savo.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Bye.